At Yale University on March 10th of 1886, class of 87 student Michael Woodward tried to make a stop during practice and wasn't able to prepare himself. In the subsequent collision, Woodward was hit on the head by his opponent's leg. He was paralyzed from the neck down and died 9 days later. What I have just described is the earliest recorded football-related death. Since then, numerous football players have died prematurely. However, since Woodward's death in 1886, the understood factors of these deaths have changed significantly. From catastrophic collisions to severe concussions to chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, football-related problems have shifted over the years, but they have yet to wane. In November of 1905, President Teddy Roosevelt telegraphed Harvard's president, Charles Eliot, asking him to address the year's record of 19 deaths for fear that the sport's bloody reputation would get it banned outright instead of changed to protect the players. TR convened 2 White House conferences in an effort to encourage reforms of college football practices of the day, which had already prompted many colleges and universities to discontinue the sport. Following those White House meetings, Chancellor Henry McCracken of New York University organized a meeting of 13 institutions to initiate changes in football playing rules. From this, the modern game of football was born. In came the forward pass, the 10-yard first down, the lengthening of the line of scrimmage, an emphasis on penalties, and a novel emphasis on improving the quality of refereeing to prevent the dangerous play on the lines.
Le'Veon Bell on that one. Here he goes.
Instead of toss, Anderson, he'll get it, and plenty more. C.J. Anderson is going to go all the way, and the Denver Broncos win the game.
And only appropriate that C.J. Anderson brings.
At a follow-up meeting to Henry McCracken's on December 28th of 1905, 62 higher education institutions became charter members of the Intercollegiate Athletic Association of the United States, or the IAAUS. It was officially established on March 31st of 1906, and it took its present name in 1910. You might even be familiar with it, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, better known as the NCAA.
Play action. And Manning's going to heave one. There's a flag. Beckham, one-handed catch. How in the world?
Oh, my goodness.
And Brandon Carr was back there. I mean, he is insane. How do you make that catch?
Oh, my goodness. This is sick. Put this to music. I don't think he stepped out either. That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen.
Number 39.
You have to be kidding me. That is impossible. That is absolutely impossible what he just did. That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
It's in the conversation.
Wow. After being fouled. I mean, he was clearly fouled on the play.
Grants to the 30, heads to the left to the 20, shakes the tackle, and
Injuries would rise again, but one integral problem was a lack of good data. Not until 1931 were statistics regularly kept on football fatalities. Over the years, those numbers would show a pattern of deaths that would return to the numbers that nearly ended football in America before it began.
Here comes the, y'all don't really want it like, yeah. Here comes the, y'all don't really want it like, yeah. Here comes the, y'all don't really want it like, yeah. Here comes the, y'all don't really want it like, yeah. Here comes the, y'all don't really want it like, yeah. Here comes the, y'all don't really want it like, yeah. Here comes the, y'all don't really want it like.
Between 1965 and 1969, More than 100 players at all levels died of brain injuries, an average of about 20 per year, about the same number as died in 1905, but from brain injuries alone. The mounting number of head injuries led to significant equipment and rule changes that altered the sport and made it profoundly safer, at least in the short run.
So let me tell you the deal. I'm also serious, I'm dirty, I'm no longer for real. I'm like a hop, skip, and a jump, a clock grip on the pump, from leaving you in the trunk, somewhere prepared to jump.
The change was extraordinary. Between rule changes and the 1973 creation of NOCSAE, the National Operating Committee on Standards for Athletic Equipment, head injury fatalities in high school football declined by 3/4.
The game of football starts with your pregame ritual, getting dressed in the locker room. All that equipment that you're wearing is your body armor. The helmet's your most important piece. It has to allow you to perform at your best. You have to feel good about what you're putting on. Helmets have changed so much over the years. I mean, the first helmet that I had in high school, it had maybe one inflation point. But besides that, it didn't really fit the way that I wanted it to, as well as a smaller shell. So the protection just wasn't there. Even at that level, right, in high school, I still understood the risks of football. With the new technology that's available today, it tries to mitigate those risks and tries to minimize them.
We work with everybody that's involved in the game when we design a football helmet. Players have direct input, but so do equipment managers, so do coaches, and so does the team medical staff. The design process is often very iterative. We pull things and push things and break things and impact things to make sure that they meet all the specifications that we require of a football helmet.
Some of the new features in it that make it completely different than any other helmet on the market is the flex front. From the almost 2 million impacts that we've recorded, the majority of the impacts happen right in the frontal area here. So we wanted to ensure that we were, looking specifically at that area and seeing what we could do to improve it.
The problem with this new equipment, the first generation of which was brought about in the 70s, is this. Since it is designed to prevent sudden death, it forces a trade-off with the death of 1,000 blows that claimed the Cardinals' Dave Duerson and the Patriots' Junior Seau. It's not uncommon for a player to sustain hits equivalent to the impact of a 25-mile-per-hour car crash. There is no clear threshold for injury. However, in a car crash, you stop in a matter of feet. In an NFL impact, on the other hand, you stop in inches. The dilemma is ultimately one of physics. All helmets work under the same principle. The force striking one's head, acceleration mixed with mass, can't actually be prevented. The laws of physics say that energy has to go somewhere. Ever heard of shaken baby syndrome? Well, the same abnormal protein found in players posthumously diagnosed with CTE, which I'll talk about later, is also found in the brains of children who have died as a result of traumatic head trauma.
How different is the game when you're on the sidelines than when it is when you're watching television? How much more violent does it seem? How much has it changed, or has it changed over the years?
Well, it's a very serious game, and it goes back to the high school physics principle that force is equal to mass times acceleration. We now have much bigger masses, we have faster fields, we have faster athletes, and we have much greater forces. And these forces get translated into knee injuries, shoulder injuries, head injuries, neck injuries. So, and the quickness, the fast, the speed of the game, the speed of the athletes, all contribute to what is surprising, not more injuries.
Bone-shaking hits, the high-impact spectacular plays that people want to see, often get blamed for the rash of concussions and the long-term mental problems that they cause. But research suggests that a culprit is the totality of hits a player sustains over the course of a career, rather than particularly severe ones. The one hit that may have brought on a concussion is rather the straw that broke the camel's back.
Lately, it's been difficult to talk about football without mentioning concussions. Why? Well, mounting concern over a disease called chronic traumatic encephalopathy, more commonly known as CTE. In the world of medicine, CTE is a relative newcomer. In football, we just learned about it 10 to 15 years ago. Here's what we can say. It's a progressive degenerative brain disease. It is like Alzheimer's. It can start with memory loss, mood swings, and difficulty in concentration, developing into progressive dementia, even possible thoughts of suicide. But unlike Alzheimer's, CTE can also result in significant aggression and lack of impulse control. The big difference, symptoms tend to begin much earlier in life, closer to your 40s instead of your 60s. In both diseases, there's no known cure. Researchers believe there's only one way to get CTE, and that is repeated hits to the head. What happens is that you get a buildup of an abnormal protein called tau in the brain. Scientists do know both the location of the tau and how much tau in the brain determines the symptoms you might exhibit. But scientists don't yet have a magic number of hits that results in CTE. It also isn't known who exactly would develop CTE. There are some players who take many hits and never develop symptoms. Factors like genetics and age of exposure to the trauma could play a role. How do you know if you have CTE? Just because you have symptoms doesn't mean you have the disease. In fact, as things stand now, you can only be diagnosed for sure after death. Scientists are researching how to diagnose in living people. A prominent group of researchers have found over 90% of former NFL players have developed CTE. But remember something important here. The number could be so high because of something known as selection bias. That means the brains that were studied were from people who worried that they had CTE. Also, it's not just football players that need to be concerned. Boxers, soccer players, people in the military, anyone who's exposed to constant head trauma can develop it too.
Well, so we got the brain of Tom McHale. I knew he was a Cornell graduate. I knew he'd played for Cornell. And I knew he was a 9-year veteran of the NFL. And then when we looked at the sections, again, this is a 45-year-old with terrific disease. I mean, he had florid disease. He has tau in all these regions of his brain. And to know that he was 45 when he died, that is so extraordinary. You don't get changes like this until you're usually much older, and then only if you have a genetic susceptibility or something. So to see a change in such a young individual really was quite extraordinary.
How bad was it?
I mean, it was about as bad as you get. I mean, it could get worse. It could be end stage. It could be so bad that it's starting to sort of completely involute and the brain is starting to just shrink to nothing. But it was pretty florid disease. There were what we call neurofibrillary tangles everywhere. They were throughout his hippocampus. They were throughout his frontal lobe. I'd never seen anything like it in a person so young.
And given that, and given the function of the hippocampus and other places, frontal lobes, what would one expect to see as symptoms of somebody who had disease spread like that?
Well, I would have expected hippocampal involvement, memory problems, lots of problems with learning, probably problems with executive function, planning, organization, judgment. That's about as far as I would have gotten.
While munching on my apple, I put the slides in and looked. Whoa! I had to make sure the slides were Mike Webster's slides. I looked again. I saw changes that shouldn't be in a 50-year-old man's brain, and also changes that shouldn't be in a brain that look normal. I saw abnormal proteins in his brain, in so-called neurofibrillary tangles, the neuritic threads, pardon the jargon. But I looked at several, the topographic distribution. It was different from Alzheimer's disease. I saw, again, that complicated my disposition, my state of mind. So I took the slides home. I said, this is something I need to spend time with. After I looked at it over and over and over and over, I was convinced this was something. I said, okay, it's something, but don't make the mistake other people made. Don't just publish it and give it a descriptive name, give it name it a disease, give it a name, present it as a disease, package it, develop a pathogenetic concept for it.
I'm an expert on what I see in the brain, and that's really all I presented. What I saw in these individuals' brains, and I also did say that, in my opinion, it was related to trauma because I'd only seen this pattern of changes in brains that had experienced considerable trauma. But a repetitive, mild trauma, not the big blow to the head, not the big bleeding in the brain. This is, small, repetitive traumas.
Head slaps.
Head slaps.
Helmet to helmet in the pit on the line.
Right. Things that we used to think didn't affect the brain, didn't permanently damage the brain. But I had evidence that it did. Subconcussive hits were just beginning to come into people's sight. We were just hearing from some accelerometer data that individuals, linemen, were getting like 900 to 1,500 hits over the level of 10 Gs, which is, a mild hit, but it's still something, every season. So if you think about it, if you play 10 seasons, you got, 10,000, 15,000 hits. I mean, that data was just starting to come in.
Wait a minute. Say that again?
Well, there's data from accelerometers. Greenwald and other people were putting detectors in the helmets to measure the velocity of the hits. And even though it's an imperfect system and it doesn't register all the hits, they were measuring 900 to 1,500 hits in a season for one player. And sometimes some players are getting 2,200 hits. One season. College football and now high school football. It's not just professional football.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like this threatens the very heart of American football.
Yes, and some of them actually said that I'm attacking the American way of life. How dare you, a foreigner like you from Nigeria? What is Nigeria known for? The 8th most corrupt country in the world? Who are you? Who do you think you are? To come to tell us how to live our lives?
It's that fundamental, what you discovered?
Yes. It depends on your perception, though. My perception is, again, spiritually, seek thee the truth, and the truth shall set you free. I rather want to be told the truth, and I'll deal with the truth, than be wallowing in ignorance and darkness and lies.
Well, it has tremendous implications for little children who play football, to high school kids, to college kids, to professionals.
But through the power of positive thinking, you take the information, the implications, and turn it into something positive. You rather embrace knowledge and use it to create more positive knowledge and make more positive impacts. It depends on how you look at it. That you're being objective. Who knows, if I had grown up in this country and loved football, I could have just examined Mike Webster's brain and threw it away, block it out. Because the impact, yes, it could have end up eventually generations undermine football. But there is nothing in life that is more important than the life of somebody, even just one. The parable of the lost sheep. One sheep got lost. The parable, the shepherd kept the 99 and went after the one. And so there is the one life lost is more valuable than any other activity. Some people while adding value to entertainers, while contributing to the American experience, paid the ultimate price with their lives. And unfortunately, we're not aware, while they were entertaining us, that they were slowly losing their lives. If you're a military person and you sign up to become a member of the military, you know there's a reasonable chance that you will die, or you could suffer permanent body harm. But a football player signs up at 4 years old, which is very sad. A child of 6, 7 years old signs up.
You had children who were 8 and 10 and 12. Would they play football?
8, 10, 12, no, they would not.
Why?
Because the way football's being played currently that I've seen, it's dangerous. It's dangerous, and it could impact their long-term mental health. You'd only get one brain. The thing you want your kids to do most of all is succeed in life and be everything they can be. And if there's anything that may infringe on that may limit that, I don't want my kids doing it.
How many NFL players that are playing the game right now probably have CTE?
Okay. Based on my experience, there's not been any NFL player I've examined that did not have CTE. Now, the degrees of advancement of the disease will be different, and they have different types. So my opinion, based on my experience, is all of them.
Did you say all of them?
All of them. All the NFL players I've examined pathologically, I have not seen one that did not have changes in their brain consistent with brain damage.
And your guess is it's not just a special group you're seeing who happen to kill themselves or whatever. It would be present even in active players even now?
I think in active players who have played through high school, college, each and every one of them, in my opinion, has a certain degree of brain damage. CTE is progressive. Let me give you a good example. There's this
wait a minute. CTE is progressive, therefore...
the longer they live, the more advanced the disease becomes.
So what are the costs? The costs of eliminating football in its entirety, of getting rid of a sport that has shaped the American way of life, a sport that shares a day of the week with God Himself. At the high school level and into college, there are roughly 1.5 million kids learning leadership, teamwork, perseverance, and tenacity, things that are arguably dwindling in the youth of America today. To eliminate the activities that instill these qualities because they're tough or because one might sustain an injury could remove an opportunity for the youth of our country to learn the valuable lessons that built it. But what are the human costs? The effects of CTE have taken Mike Webster, Dave Duerson, Junior Seau, Andre Waters, 27-year-old Tyler Sash, and 18-year-old Eric Pelly, to name a few. But don't look to the pros. Most adult men aren't going to eradicate the way that they make a living. Instead, look to high school and college, where voters and parents still have some say.